I'm Michael Bain, and this is SGO right here on Downrange TV. You probably can't see me, right? Because I'm wearing camouflage. So you're looking and you're going like, well, I can see his head, but the rest of him is totally hidden because he's in camouflage. Well, maybe not. However, it is hunting season. I think this is the last SGO, last Shooting Gallery Online, before we go seriously into autumn. And you guys know I have this huge problem with autumn, but we won't go into that right now. The key thing, though, is for a lot of people, autumn means getting out into the woods. Hunting season, some of the seasons are already open. The big game season's open. All of these things are happening in the fall, and it's a really big deal, and I totally understand that. So does my friend here, who's an 11-point Texas Hill Country buck from a couple of years ago. What I wanted to talk about, though, is one of my little pet peeves. And I know over the years you've heard a lot of these pet peeves. And the particular one is I would like to see hunters train more. And the reason is we owe it to the animals. That's 100% the reason right there. When we say we are going into the field and we are going to hunt, we are going to take an animal's life. And honestly, straightforward, when we accept that, then it's our responsibility to see to it that we do that in the most efficient and the most painless and the quickest way possible. That means we need to know how to shoot the gun. And you're probably going, well, why is Michael such a fanatic on this? Well, my father, rest his soul, hunted deer his whole life. And I hunted with him in the early days sometimes. And basically my father, I don't know, couldn't hit the ground. He had a couple of different deer hunting guns, a 30-30 Winchester. He had a Swedish Mauser that he had quote-unquote sporterized. Later he had a Seiko, a 264 Magnum that would actually detonate the little Tennessee whitetails. I actually cooked them, and as the guy who cleaned them, I know that. But I always thought it was strange that my father, who cared so much about animals, cared so much about hunting, actually fired 3 or 4 rounds a year. He would have a box of 20 and he'd go out and fire 5 and maybe shoot 2 hunting. And then next year he would still have that box of ammunition. So I said, I don't want to be that person. And I also think you don't want to be that person either. So what we're going to look at a little bit here in the studio before we wander aimlessly out into the field to see one of my favorite training areas. And this is something I don't think we've showed you before. We may have talked about it, but we've never showed you. I wanted to show you my 2 favorite hunting trainers. I believe in the 22 rimfire. I believe in the 22 rimfire as a training tool. And I think it is a superb training tool. They're inexpensive. The ammo is inexpensive. You have a lot more options on where to shoot. And that means that you have a lot more opportunities to train. So I am going to say, if you're hunting, you should have a doppelganger of your hunting rifle, your primary hunting rifle, in 22 long rifle. And I do. I have 2, and I wanted to show you both those guns. Now this first one here, this is my second Henry Repeating Arms 22 long rifle lever gun. I like lever actions. I like shooting lever actions. I like hunting with lever actions, which is why I took them to Africa. And as I look forward, as I say, well, what am I going to hunt in the future? What I see is a lever action. I see that and I think, boy, I really enjoy doing that. So I have 2 22 lever actions. One, a Golden Boy with just one of the buckhorn sights. This particular one I especially like. It has a Skinner peep sight. My friend Andy Larson at Skinner makes this sight for Henry Repeating Arms. And it allows you to get that perfect, peep sight view. You shoulder the gun, you look through the little circle, and your eye wants to center on that front bead. It makes it a really quick way to pick up a gun shooting. You come to the shoulder, you're looking right here, you cheek, you see a little bitty circle. The circle is kind of fuzzy because, we can only focus on one thing at a time. Circle's a little fuzzy, and right in the middle of the circle is that front post and the round bead on the front post. I like that a lot. Gun has an excellent trigger. It's pretty. So, this is a gun that if you're going to hunt with a lever action, you can take this gun out and you can practice with it. And you can practice with it over and over and over and over. What's a box of 50 rounds of ammunition? And plus the advantage of a lever action, it doesn't matter which crummy 22 ammunition you get. You can get it at Wally World for whatever the cheapest thing you can get. This gun will run it. If you want to be quiet, CCI quiets. As you know, I use Gym Tech in some of my semi-auto rifles. I do like that a lot. But on a manually operated rifle like this, why not use CCI quiet, which is a darn quiet ammunition? So that kind of cuts down on the noise. And once again, I'm talking about being able to shoot more, to practice more, to do more. So we look at the lever gun. I want to show you my bolt gun because it has been a workhorse for me over the years. This is, I think we've seen it before, but I want to just talk about it in context today. This is a cheap Ruger American. Now, you know, Ruger started making the American rifle, and, you know, the funniest thing, a story I've told before, talking to the executives at Ruger, they say, what do you think if we made a low-cost bolt-action rifle, entry-level bolt-action rifle? Like, who buys those things? And it turned out everybody in America bought two. They had to build a whole factory to make the things, but they began making the Ruger American in .22 long rifle. This is one of the very early ones. They now have a Target version and several other things, but basically it is an inexpensive bolt-action .22 that feeds from a standard Ruger 10/22 magazine. Easy peasy, right? No problems at all. So those magazines are cheap. They're $10 a pop. Have a million of them, or if you have a 10/22. And I'm not saying you can't use a 10/22 to train with, especially if you're shooting a semi-auto. Again, a doppelganger. If you're hunting with an AR-15, Smith & Wesson makes an excellent .22 AR-15. Or you can build one like mine, Spikes Tactical. JP Rifles, a wonderful, wonderful gun. Everybody makes a .22 AR, Tactical Solutions, for example. So whatever you're shooting with, whatever you're hunting with, whatever you're doing with, use that. This gun, you'll notice, it's not in a Ruger American stock. It is in a stock from Boyd's. And Boyd's is probably the foremost maker of wood stocks in the country. Why did I do this? Well, that's $100, $120. I wanted to make it way more. I wanted to make it mimic the rifle that I was hunting with, my Ruger guide gun or my Ruger Gunsight Scout. This gun weighs very similar to that. I wanted that. The second thing, you've got a scope on here because with those bolt guns I hunt with the scope. This is a great .22 scope. Super. It's a Burris 2 to 7x drop tine. Once again, inexpensive scope. I'm not saying spend a fortune here. It mimics the power, the scope that I have on my hunting rifles. And I've shot this thing a zillion times. The great thing about this one over the lever gun is this one is threaded. It's got a threaded end piece. I can thread a suppressor on it. Why is that handy? Well, you may be in a place where you can't like shoot loudly. You may not want to like bother your neighbors. Or in some cases, one of the things I use this gun for is training at dusk. When was the last time you trained at dusk before you went into the field? So now that I've introduced you to the guns, I'm going to introduce you to the course. This is something I built several years ago, and it was a course designed to train me to be a better hunter. So when SGO comes back, we're headed into the field. Welcome back to SGO. We're down on, I guess you would call it the South 40 of the Secret Hidden Bunker Ranch as thunderstorms come rolling in from the mountains. And interestingly enough, we're standing on an old wagon road from the mid-late 1800s. It allowed people to take mining gear up to the mines high in the mountains. Local ranchers used it to run cattle. It's been closed for a lot of years. And I used it to develop a tool to make me a better hunter, to make me a better shooter, and I wanted to show it to you to give you a sense of how that might work. When I came back from Africa the first time, I realized my shortcomings both as a hunter and as a shooter, and I resolved to figure out a way to fix those shortcomings. And what's behind me here and down below me and scattered all through here is the tool that I use to correct that. You can call it, as Jeff Cooper would, a donga. You can call it a jungle trail. You can call it a woods walk. But what I have here out in the brush, or if you want to use African terminology, out there in the thorn, because there's a lot of thorns out there, are targets. 22 targets are scattered throughout this draw. Now, most of them are those wonderful action targets with that blue knockout center. There's also some MGM and I believe some from Caldwell. A lot of them, I move them around, different ones. Some I leave here on a regular basis. What I tried to do when I set this up was to duplicate every shot that I faced on my first trip to Africa, and then essentially work on all those different shots. The great thing about a woods walk, and I would love it if every range had one of these, or if you had the opportunity of a friend's farm, a friend's property, something to do it. And we're going to give you some tips in just a minute. The great thing here is everything changes. It changes based on the time of day. Where's the sun? Sometimes the targets glow, they're so bright. Sometimes I look out there and go, where are they? I put them out there, I don't know where they are. Same thing with the seasons, the terrain changes, the color of the terrain changes. Everything blooms, gets green, covers the targets. By midwinter, all of a sudden the targets stand out because it's snow. So I've shot this in snow, I've shot this in rain. I may be shooting this in rain in just a minute, but I start at the bottom and I work my way to the top every time with a different challenge. That is how you make yourself a better hunter. I'm really lucky to be able to do this, but think about how we do this. Think about the things that we do. I'm going to show you a couple of other tips, but first let's put some rounds into those targets. Obviously, not everyone is lucky enough to have something like the Secret Hidden Bunker Ranch, this spectacular piece of property. In fact, my good friend Patrick Kelly, the three-gun champion, said, we were talking about this woods walk, and he goes, brother, you are blessed. But there are things that I learned here that you can take with you even on a square range. First thing I want to talk about is the sequencing of targets. In a hunting situation, the game moves. Well, not many of us, even me, have a running game target. But what we do have is multiple plates, and this is something I've used pretty extensively. We have a plate at maybe 20 yards, or we have a plate at 7 yards, 18 yards, 20 yards, because animals run. Or we have an animal running diagonal. We have a plate here, here, here. What you can do is you can practice that movement. You can practice your swing with the rifle, and you can do it with just a few plates. The other thing that really can put the pressure on you is this guy right here. It's a timer. It is one of the most important tools that you can use to make yourself a better shooter. Let me give you Larry Potterfield's drill. When I went to Africa this time, Cape Buffalo, Larry Potterfield said, you know what? A Cape Buffalo can cover 50 yards in 7 seconds. So this is Larry's drill. One plate at 50 yards, one plate at 25 yards, one plate at 7 yards, and you have a total of 7 seconds to hit those plates. Of course, you don't have the incentive of 1,500 pounds of buffalo charging towards you, but you're pressured. You can use this timer to set par times to pressure yourself as you sequence targets. Say, I've got 3 targets here. I got to hit those 3 targets dead center in 3 seconds. You can program that right into this timer, and you can do it again and again and again. You can sense what the swing is. That is an important tool that you can use on virtually any range. That's one of the reasons we want to talk about it here. Other thing you can do on your property, find things. If you're walking on a hike, you're up these wonderful Rocky Mountains, you're visiting friends in a park, find things, look for things. My sweetie does that. She is not a hunter, but she knows more about mule deer than most hunters that I've ever met. She studies them, she watches them, she looks for them. Are they in the bush? It's hard to see animals in the bush. You can train yourself to do that without ever having a gun with you. These are important tools, and they're easy and they're free. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Arms Corps, Rock Island Armory. What's your passion? Taurus USA, always ready, always bring it. Stoger, everyday tough. SDS Imports and the Tisas PX9. Tisas means quality. Hunter's HD Gold. They change so you don't have to. This may sound strange coming from a TV guy because I do produce television, but for me, hunting is more than traipsing around in the wood, whacking an animal, and then smacking all your friends on the butt and jumping up and down and laughing and screaming. It's something that connects me back to my own youth, and by extension through my fathers, my grandfathers, my great-grandfathers. It ties so many things together. And one of the things I said on the air after my eland hunt in Namibia is and I was exhausted. It was a brutal hunt in the Kalahari Desert in awful temperatures. I was ripped up by the thorns. I sat down next to the animal and you know, I said, yes, it was hard, but it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard. If you want to easily collect meat for your freezer, you can buy it at the supermarket. When you go into the field hunting, it's more than just collecting food. It's to attach yourself, to be a part of nature at a level that people who are just looking at nature, people who are just visiting nature, can never really understand. So we owe it to ourselves to be the very best hunters that we can be. And that means you gotta shoot the guns. You gotta shoot the guns a lot. One more point, you buy these 22s, if you've got kids, man, this is the way to get them started shooting. This is the absolute best way to do it. This is something like this Henry, is something you can pass down to your children, and hopefully they can pass down to their children. And they can talk about how Granddad told them what hunting was really about. We'll see you next week.